It looks like it's 6:30, so we'll go ahead and have our do our roll call for the evening.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Here.
Commissioner Keller,
I'm here.
Commissioner Berg,
Here.
Chair Haley.
Here, and I kind of got out of order. So this is the Historic Preservation Commission for January 25th, 2021, the first one of the year. We just had our roll call. I'll go over our meeting for the electronic meeting procedures. So all planning commissioners will be on the video. Commissioners and staff will be asked to click raise hand when they wish to speak. The chair will call on individuals to speak. Commissioners and staff are asked to keep their microphones muted until they're called upon. Members of the public will be muted during presentations and commission discussion. For public participation, the public may join the meeting from the computer or dial it by phone. All public members are muted upon entry. To make a comment during public comment segments, by computer, click on the raise hand icon is either in the participants panel on the right side of your screen or in the corner panel at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You may have to hover over that area to see it. And if you're on phone, hit *9 to raise your hand. The chair will call upon those with raised hands individually, and you will be unmuted when called upon. All right, and then looking at our agenda for the evening, does anyone have any changes or additions? And if not, we can move to approve.
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Agenda's approved. And then we have our election of officers and our historical commission liaison. So we have a new member tonight. This is Chrissy Berg. So we're very, very thankful to have you. And we were talking kind of before the meeting, just that if there are any questions, and this always goes for any of our commissioners, because a lot of us are relatively new. And so anytime there's a question or concern or anything, there's always time for discussion, always time for finding the answer, and this is definitely the place to do that. So we just want you to feel comfortable, not feeling like it's too formal or you're on the spot or taking too much time. Like, this is where all of the process happens. So yeah, Chrissy, this is the first time we've had new members in a remote setting. So I'm like, this is funny to introduce you, you might see everyone's names, but yeah, Andrew, you've been on the commission. This is going into your third year. Is that right?
Yeah, Gary and I started together, and we're starting our third year.
Okay. And then Keith, is this your second year or second and a half? I'm sorry, you're muted actually.
I think he's been in 1 year and starting a second.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So yeah, so very different. And Chrissy, do you want to say anything or introduce yourself or anything?
Sure. So I'm obviously a Louisville resident. My family and I moved to Louisville 8 years ago from Vermont, most recently. I have taught high school history on and off for almost 20 years. I'm not currently teaching right now. I love living in Louisville. I walk all over Louisville and looking through all the properties. I feel like I know a lot of the properties just from admiring the architecture in Louisville. So I'm very excited to be part of preserving the past of our city, because the past speaks loudly as we move into the present. So it's really, I think, an important job. So thank you for welcoming me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Chrissy's also done lots of Colorado history tours in general too. So I'll throw that in there, because I think that always helps just in the larger scheme of things, how everything kind of works together. So it's it'll be a great asset. So now the introductions are in, we'll do our new or I'm trying to think of the word. Ah,
Election of officers.
yes,
or
election of officers.
Nominations, I guess you could start with
Yes,
nominations.
looking for my. So I've been chair for some time. And I'm happy to keep doing it unless someone else would love to do it. So
I would suggest that if Linda's willing to keep doing it, she's done a great job of being the chair. And a lot of that involves kind of clarifying what the goals of our preservation plan are and how they relate to different things. And she's articulated that. And I think Andrea's done a good job also of expressing really good ideas, new ideas through the year. And maybe she would like to be the vice chair this year. My 2 cents.
yeah. Are you open to that, Andrea? Would you like some discussion about what that looks like?
No, the only reason I'm hesitant, thank you, Gary, that was nice of you to say. I was going to nominate you, actually. So
Gotcha.
that's how we go. But no, I guess, yeah, Linda, it's awesome if you're the chair. You just do a great job of mediating the conversations and getting us through the flow and keeping it all very, very calm and polite and civil and everything. So that'd be awesome. The only reason I was, honestly, the only reason I would hesitate is, yeah, because as vice chair, if you have to run the meetings, I'm like, whoa, I wouldn't know what to do. So
Yeah, I think it is intimidating. You would be absolutely fine. And there's, I mean, it's really just kind of scripted, like you just go through the agenda. So, but it's also a good way to learn it too. So, I think
Andrea, we'll throw out as staff, we'll happily, whoever is elected or vice chair, we'd meet you. We could meet before the first time you chair a meeting and just do a practice session with you. So you'd have staff support on that, whoever is vice chair.
yeah, I don't think Hannah had to do any last year. I didn't take
you
advantage
didn't,
of.
you were a rock star. You went to all of them.
I know. So I don't know if your good luck will continue or if you'll have to do a meeting, but yeah, I think staff always does a good job of just helping and just making sure that you get it. And then really it is, it's pretty easy. I was very intimidated by it in the beginning, but once you realize like, oh, it's just this nice little order of things, it's pretty simple. So.
But you have a finesse with it. I'm just saying.
Oh.
You have a very good finesse with it. It's not just going through the thing. It's just, anyway. And also, but Keith, I might throw it to you too, because Keith, you this is not the first time you've served on a Louisville committee or commission or whatever. You've served in other capacities. How do you feel?
True.
Would you like to be the vice chair?
You know, I
I mean,
appreciate the offer.
I'll do it. I will do it, but
I feel very
but
comfortable with you, Andrea. But you know, if there was nobody else, I would certainly step up and volunteer.
all right, that's fine. Yeah, Linda will just come to every meeting and it'll be a great year. No, that's fine. I am happy to do it. It'll be fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
And Gary, you're not interested in it?
Well, I really appreciate the program and like helping with it. I'm retired, so I have lots of time to give to it, but I don't think I'm as good an extemporaneous speaker as a lot of people are. So I look at the minutes of what we've talked about, and a lot of times what I'm trying to say just hasn't come across right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we can just do an easy vote just with someone wants to make a nomination. I'm
Yeah.
looking at everything. If someone wants to recommend, make a motion, that's the word.
I would
And we
move,
can just go ahead and do
I
both
would
of
move
them.
that Linda continue as the chairman of our group and Andrea become the vice chairman of our commission.
I second.
I was gonna say, I think you have to maybe. And all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? All right.
Unanimous.
So yes, thank you, Andrea, for
Thanks,
being on your
Andrea.
position. Yeah. It'll be good to work with you. All right, so looking back at our minutes from last year, December 21st, if anyone got a chance to reread through that very long meeting, if anyone wants to make any changes or notice anything, otherwise we can move to approve.
You know, it was a very complex meeting, so I did go back and look at them. And I don't think we kind of wrapped up our discussion of the conservation easement. Well, in some ways, we didn't finish number 30, which was the specific conservation easement for what, 601 Lincoln? Like one of the lines said that the staff, the Greens and the city attorneys could work out the language for the agreement. And so it didn't sound complete as is. Certainly there were some gaps in that, but I think one of the things we're going to need to do is schedule a meeting to talk about conservation easements or an item. When we talked about 809 Main, the way it was translated was that I asked about the proposed costs versus the costs that were in the 2018 HSA. And it was a little more than that. Those costs had tripled. So I guess I would have put a stronger slant on it, but basically those things are there.
Okay. So, so basically just that there wasn't a full discussion about the conservation easement as far as the attorney working it out. That was one of your concerns. And then the
Well,
tripled increase,
yeah.
the HSA.
When we get to that point, maybe we'll can talk about the status of that resolution 30,
Yeah.
and maybe not as part of the minutes.
Yeah. We might be able to see what city council too. Did you watch the city council? Has it gone to city council yet?
No, it hasn't gone to city council and it's not scheduled for city council yet.
Okay.
They're required to get some title work and some other legal documents in order to get to that stage. And so we're waiting on that.
Okay. Okay. So we noted those. Any other changes or remarks? And if we can get a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes from December 21st, 2020.
I'll second that.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Any public comments that are not on our agenda this evening? And I don't see any. All right, and so our first, we have a public hearing for demolition and probable cause determination. This is for 832 Park View Street, and we'll have a staff presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Haley. Let me get, sorry, the Zoom box is always over the slideshow button here. Yeah, so tonight you are considering two requests as it relates to 832 Parkview. Probable cause in order to fund an HSA, as well as a request to demolish the principal structure at 832 Parkview. So just for a little bit of context, 832 Parkview is on the corner of Main Street and Parkview Street. It's on the northwest side. And this is kind of an unusual block in that in this block face, it just consists of four platted lots, but two lots as they've been developed. This aerial is, while it's a 2018 aerial, it's outdated. This property across the street went through demolition review a few years ago, and there is currently a new home on this 410 property here across the street. So just for a little context on the aerial. See, these photos are recently taken of the property. So this photo on your left is looking at the property from roughly the corner of Parkview and Main Street. So kind of the primary view of this home. You can see it's really retained its original form to a large degree. This window up here is not original. Obviously the vinyl siding, photovoltaic system's not original. There's some question as to kind of the when the stone cladding around this front porch was added. There's some anecdotal story that it's not original, but it's been there at least since 1955. And then these windows were added over time, although there was no evidence in the building permit record for when those windows were added. You can see here an image looking again from Parkview, so front facade, but this is looking more at the western elevation. And finally, a photo of kind of the rear of the property. So this is the Main Street facade. These two windows face Main Street. And then this over here, kind of where the vehicle is the north elevation. So kind of the rear of the property there. There is an accessory structure, actually two accessory structures on the property, but that is not up for demolition. The owners at this time wish to retain that. The deck obviously is not original. I can't remember exactly the date. I believe it was mid 2000s for the deck construction, might have been late 1990s. So when we review probable cause for a property, we look to the landmark criteria to see if there's probable cause if the property could be landmarked. There's three that we kind of look at here: that they must be at least 50 years old, must meet one or more of the criteria for architectural, social, or geographical environmental significance, and they should meet one or more criteria for physical integrity. There was more detailed history provided in your packet, but generally the house itself, while the neighborhood, the plat for the area was approved in 1907, this particular house was constructed in 1935, and staff believes, based on the museum's research, that this delay in construction was due to the close proximity for the Acme mine. So some of you may have seen photos of the large Acme mine dump that was south of town, and that would have been kind of directly across the street and a little bit to the north of this lot. And therefore this lot would have been really undesirable until kind of the mid 1930s, when that was cleaned up and the mine was shut down. So you can see there's no assessor 1948 assessor card photo for this like we normally have. This image on the left is a cropped image of the 1955 photo for the property to the west, actually, the neighboring property. So we can see kind of a portion of it. And then this image here on the right with the white siding, again, stone porch, not closed in yet, no new window up above. This is the 1976 photo. So when we look at criteria for architectural, social, or geographic significance, we find that the structure is an early to mid 20th century frame residential structure. The street-facing facades has retained its original form, with the exception of kind of the enclosing of that front porch. The exterior is now clad in vinyl siding, and other elements have been replaced. The stone-clad porch, again, has been there at least since 1955, but anecdotally may have been installed in the 1940s. When we look for physical integrity, it adds character and value to Old Town Louisville. The structure has retained its overall form and appearance from the street and represents a growth pattern typical here in Louisville. So we do find that there is probable cause that this structure could be landmarked under all of the criteria. And so staff believes that this property is eligible for the cost of an HSA. The current maximum amount available would be $4,000. So you can make a motion to approve or deny the findings of probable cause. But piggybacking on that, the owners are also they have an application in for demolition of the principal structure. This did go to subcommittee, and subcommittee did send this up, called this up to the full commission for consideration. And so really the criteria for demolition, it starts out the same, you know, is there probable cause that the structure could be landmarked? And based on our previous analysis, yes, staff believes, or staff finds that there is probable cause that this is a landmarkable structure. The next, the next kind of criteria revolve around reasonable condition of the building and reasonable projected cost of restoration and repair. The homeowners who are on the call, as well as their applicant, who is also on the meeting tonight, they've done, you know, quite a bit of kind of evaluation of the property. The applicant has lived in the home for a number of years now, and so they're familiar with the kind of the current state of the home. And there's reason to believe that there's, you know, kind of significant drainage issues which have caused damage to the foundation likely, as well as seeping into the basement of the home itself, as well as kind of the location of the structure being really close to the west property line. It would make kind of adding egress windows and things to making this kind of single story home have a more livable feel in the basement. The ceiling is low, things like that. So from a kind of moving forward stuff, based on the finding of probable cause, staff's recommending approval of the HSA to help determine kind of the preservation means and methods and projected costs and things like that, you know, to determine if, you know, a whole new foundation is required, what have you, things like that. So with that though, we are recommending a 120-day stay, which is roughly 3 additional months, and that gives the applicant time to complete the HSA, as well as evaluate all of their options for preservation. And as you know, HPC may approve the 120-day stay or release the permit or place a stay for an alternative amount of time, provided it's no greater than 120 or 180 days. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And again, the homeowners and the architect can explain more about the current condition of the property and kind of what they'd like to achieve and why.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Does anyone have any questions for staff? All right, well, did you have something, Andrew?
No, I'll wait for the architect. That'll be fine.
Okay.
All right, so we'll hear from the applicant. Do you have anything to present? Like, do you need to present your screen or anything? Okay, and if you'll just state your name and address for us for the record.
Sure. My name is Marty Beauchamp with Red Pencil Architecture. I live at 1098 West Willow Street here in Louisville. So we've been working with Joe and Pearl, the homeowners, for almost 3 months now. Went into this project with full anticipation that it would be a remodel and renovation addition. And as we started getting into it, looking at different options, different ideas, we got 2 contractors involved pretty early on. 2 separate ones came out and took a look at our project. We described kind of the idea of what we wanted to do, pop the top, add on a little bit to the west. Both of their concerns, as well as ours, evolved around the basement and the foundation condition. The current house has a basement that's only 6 foot 6 inches tall, so definitely not non-conforming. There's 2 bedrooms in the basement for the 2 sons. The egress windows are not compliant. As Lisa mentioned, the house is only slightly more than 2 feet off the west property line. So we looked at the possibility of raising the house to get more headroom in the basement, as well as the idea of digging out the basement. Both became very cost prohibitive. And along with the proximity of the home on the lot, it made it impossible to get any egress windows along the west side. And so with a front porch on the south side of the home, outdoor living, patio deck on the north side, we would only be limited to the east side to provide any kind of egress in the basement. And so ultimately, after having a structural engineer out as well, all 3 of the consultants confirmed that it would be more cost prohibitive to try and renovate and get any kind of usable space in the lower level. And that's when we decided to try and change paths and look at possibly demoing the home. Joe is on as well, and he can explain a little bit about the conditions that they've seen over the years and their investment in trying to remodel the project with, I think, almost 50,000 invested in a kitchen remodel in just the recent years. So, Joe, if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
And again,
Thank
if
you.
you'll just state your name and address for us, just for the
All
record. Thank you.
Joe Manning, and the address is 832 Parkview Street in Louisville, Colorado. Thank you. Appreciate you having us here tonight. You know, my wife and I and our two sons moved here 3.5 years ago. We love Louisville, and our sons are in 7th grade at LMS and 9th grade at Centaurus. My wife is a yoga instructor at Yoga Junction. She was a yoga instructor at the rec center until COVID hit. I mean, the community is phenomenal, and we've loved being a part of it. As Marty mentioned, so the kids, they have their 2 rooms down in the basement. And, you know, a year and a half ago, we painted the main floor, we painted the basement, the kids' rooms. We replaced the tile in the kitchen and replaced some cabinetry. And so we've always kind of thought we would just continue to renovate and update. But one thing that experienced in the basement is there can be flooding because of the setup, and it gets very moldy down there. And even for a period of time, our older son had a negative reaction to the mold. You know, he was nauseous periodically, and so we've had to get that addressed. And as Marty said, earlier in the fall, we began to look at the house to see what we could do. We had multiple construction folks come in, and we were trying to figure out what we could do with it. The feedback that we have gotten is that because of the setup with the foundation, not to just repeat what Marty just said, but that the setup, it makes it really difficult to do anything in the basement. From our perspective, needs a lot of work just in and of itself. And so all the indications we've received is that demolishing and rebuilding is the right approach. But that's kind of the path we've been on. I'm new to this. We've never done this before. But this is the feedback and the guidance we've gotten from Marty and the construction folks is that this is the really only viable path.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone on the commission have a question for the applicant? I think Andrea might have had some.
Yeah, so Marty, forgive my lack of understanding here, but so the west side, somehow this house ended up with a 2-foot side setback, is that right?
That's correct.
And so in order to build an egress window or you know, a big enough window with an egress to be able to get out safely or whatever, right? Then in order to do that, you're right on the property line.
Yeah, and actually,
is that fair?
Correct. So in order to get an egress window by code, the window well needs to be 3 feet deep. So even if you did a window well all the way to the property line, it would be non-conforming.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, you know, yeah, maybe you can get the variance, but there's still not room anyway, it sounds like. Okay.
Yeah, it would technically not meet code.
Okay. So so I know you mentioned that you guys had some contractors come out and give their 2 cents. Do you guys have a structural engineer looking at this?
Yes,
did?
we also had a structural engineer come out and do some investigative work.
And
he
so
came,
did he supply numbers or just kind of just tell you what he thought? I mean, has anybody provided you numbers with what it's going to take to shore this thing up? If
the engineer did not give specific costs, nor did the contractors.
Okay,
The engineer did kind of go through different foundation scenarios to
okay,
mitigate the issues, to shore up the house, what would be involved if we were to, say, dig out the basement an additional 2 or 3 feet. And with the contractors listening, they just thought that it made no sense, really.
okay.
One thing that hasn't been mentioned, at some point prior to Joe and Peril purchasing the home, the previous owners had tried to capture the space in the attic. So the attic is now converted to, it's the master suite, if you will, but it's really just a loft with an open bathroom. There's no door, the stairs go directly up to it. There's been a large dormer added to the west side of the original roof line. And as Lisa mentioned, the front porch obviously is original, the stone, maybe a few years later. There's also an addition on the back that wasn't pointed out. It's not clear whether or not it was an enclosed porch as well, but it's certainly an addition. You can tell from the inside, the ceiling's much lower. The floor is different directions. So there's been a couple minor additions made to the home.
Okay.
May I say one other thing that we've been contemplating, and you know, and want to follow the process in what makes sense. So, you know, our son is in 9th grade, and ideally we'd like to have the work finished so that he could spend as much of his 10th grade and subsequent high school time in what is the, you know, the new or revised house. And so just from a timing standpoint, optimally, if we can figure out and get moving on it more quickly. And so just to be transparent, a 4-month stay, we'd love it to be less, and we'll do everything we can to abide by whatever we need to. 4 months, again, the sooner the work starts, then the sooner, you know, they get to enjoy it for the little bit of time we still have with our 9th grader.
Mhm. And I guess the only question I have is, and I know you guys have talked to staff, but as far as being able to add on, like potentially if the basement has the egress issue, like potentially just adding on above and behind the house, has that been a possibility at all as far as keeping the main structure and getting more living space through landmarking, like being able to use the incentive of having a larger lot coverage, but also just adding on to the existing house? Has that been considered at all?
Yeah, we've studied different footprints, configurations. Obviously, if you add on an addition, you're going to want to put a full basement below it, which would then be approximately 3 feet lower than the existing basement. So connecting the two would be a challenge. Expanding to the north is not really an option. There's, as Lisa mentioned, a detached 2-car studio garage, fairly close proximity. So any significant growth to the north is probably prohibitive. And so going to the west again with that addition, we're still limited to that addition as being the only area to provide egress from that new lower level.
Okay. Yeah, and just I'll just say this before we bring it back to discussion for the commission, just so you kind of understand what our purpose is. But with the HSA, and I'm sure staff probably explained this to you also, but the HSA, one, the city pays for it, that comes out of our historic preservation fund, but it also acts as a kind of a historic record to some extent of having the house documented and just a good understanding of what the condition was of the house was, any historic features, any, it's just for it just helps us for future projects, kind of understanding what houses in Louisville have been like, how they've held up, different constructions, different time periods, all that. And so, so I think that, and to some extent, is as much of our desire as saving the house, even just if this really is, and I've been looking at the property line on the map, and it does look really tricky. Like it's a hard space. So in no way is the 30-day or 30 no, in no way is the stay punitive or punishment, or trying to have leverage or anything. It's more of just making sure that we get a full sense of what's going on, just for city history. So anyway, so I just want to make sure that that's really clear before we bring it back to discussion. So does anyone have any other questions for the applicants? Okay. Thank you for coming tonight and just talking to us. We appreciate it.
Can I add one more thing?
Of course.
I just wanted to mention, I was in front of the board last summer regarding the property at 1201 Lincoln, if you remember. Very similar structures, coincidentally. And we spearheaded having that house moved to 633 Lafarge. And it was pretty exciting to see the house roll down through Old Town last fall. So we don't take this lightly. We're always trying to save structures whenever possible. But sometimes it just doesn't make sense, both financially and architecturally as well. So I just wanted to mention that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a great project. It's been super fun to keep up with that too. So yeah, thank you for that. All right, are there any public comments? And I don't see any, so we'll bring it back for discussion with the commission. So just to get it out, it's definitely meets our requirements of being 50 years or older. It has strong architectural integrity. The enclosed front porch is obviously changed, but something that could be reversed pretty easily. And then the window on top and the vinyl siding, but overall, like the actual shape is very much intact. And then the historic, the social history is very strong as well. So, so those pieces are definitely there for potentially being qualified as a landmark.
Linda, I had a question.
Sure.
So it's for the commission. I was wondering if the commission has a certain standard or number they like to meet for architectural representation from certain time periods. If there's a sort of a goal they're trying to reach, or if there's at least a minimum they're trying to maintain. It sounds like, just hearing what Marty said, we do at least have one representation that's similar from this time period, or maybe that's nothing that's considered at all, how many there are.
Sure. There's not a specific number that we're trying to get to by any means. We don't have like a kind of percentage or ratio that we want from each specific time period. The area of downtown, like the geographical context of like what area of town it's in, like as staff explained that this was close to the mine. So it definitely kind of shows progression of Louisville as far as kind of moving more south, and as the mine was finished and that started growing more south. So I mean, there is that part of it is significant. Like we don't want to lose all the homes in that area. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that kind of goes into being a time period as far as that decade of growth, but we don't have a specific time period, no. Or ratio. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
To maybe more broadly answer Chrissy's question,
Mhm.
and not relevant to this property, but there have been some historic surveys done of
Mhm.
the old parts of town that talk about different types of architecture. They're very interesting, and they do make some general goals of getting different eras or types of architecture landmarked and saved. But I don't know if this one is on it or not. I don't recall it.
If
So
this
that's
property-
an interesting thing to read.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to clarify, this property is not specifically mentioned in the surveys as priority.
Right. I was going to mention that too. That was in the packet. But it is definitely a little bit older than some of the homes in more of the central area. Did I say older? Newer. It's younger. So, yeah, that's a good question though. So what are your thoughts on, well, one, I guess, does everyone agree with my staff and my meeting the requirements? Is everyone good on that?
Yeah, it definitely, yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt, it meets the requirements. I guess my question is, so just because as a commission, we say, yeah, there's probable cause, for further investigation through an HSA, we are still a voluntary program. So even if, I mean, even if we put a stay and we supply the funding for an HSA, I'm right, the homeowner still has no obligation to participate, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, if the hope obviously is that maybe they would find something that would encourage them to landmark and keep the property. But if they don't, it's more of they would kind of be doing the city a favor by giving us
Exactly.
doing the HSA for the house. Yeah.
Yeah, so that we just at least have a record.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a favor to
Right. Just
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll pay for it, but yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I would also be in
I think-
favor of approving the HSA if there was a desire to do it. Certainly, it provides some information to us. But if the obvious answer is that it will be demolished, the structural part of the HSA is not going to add too much. I think the write-up in the packet about the moisture in the basement and the low ceiling where the kids' bedrooms are was pretty compelling to me. And I guess I would support the HSA and also would not put on the 120-day stay. I'd make it more easy to obtain, a short one,
Mhm.
30-day, something like that. But that's my own thought.
And Lisa, we can adjust the stay. Isn't that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just no greater than 180 days, but you could
Right,
release it tonight. You could release it tonight, or you could do anything between tonight and 180 days.
Okay.
And the 4 months was really just, to build in time for them to complete the HSA. But they have 6 months to actually demolish the structure. So even if you release the permit tonight, there's still built-in time in the process to accomplish an HSA, but I think, staff's concern might be that it takes by taking that pause away, right, then they're
Right.
a little more apt to go forward quicker, but really, I don't know that there's any validity to that. I think it's if they're going to do an HSA, they would do an HSA, but really that was our rationale for the 120 days.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, Linda, this is Rob Zucchero. Was your question, can the HPC adjust it after this hearing or adjust it this evening?
This
Because there
evening.
has been, okay, thank you. Because I think in the past, there have been some that have come back after the hearing for adjustments. I just wanted to clarify your question. Thank you.
Because we can't adjust it after the hearing, isn't that correct?
Not without a new hearing being,
Right.
yes.
Right. So Gary, would you not do a stay at all, or would you do a shorter stay, or because I think there is some validity in staff saying like give them some time to at least look at it and think about it.
I guess the 30-day stay is pretty similar to no stay.
The application was filed on December 30th. So they're at, 25 days-ish or 26 days now. So if
Okay.
you wanted an additional 30 days, that does, basically you would need kind of 60 days.
Okay.
You want to have the effect of 30 after tonight.
Okay. So
Looks like
60
the
days, 30 days from now.
Yeah, looks like the applicant has his hand raised. I'm not
Sure.
sure if you want.
Yes, if I may, I would just like to, without having spoken with the clients directly, I would offer to commit to the HSA and commit to documenting the house, floor plans, elevations, get a structural engineer in, do the full HSA, if you would allow us to move forward with the demolition process, if that's something that can be offered.
Okay.
I'm going to throw a question out to Director Zucchero. Have you all ever done like 180 days or completion of an HSA, like it gets released kind of the earlier of the two, a condition of approval like that?
I don't think we have, but I think it would, if we could, I think that would probably be beneficial. I don't know that we have before.
And I don't know if we can answer that tonight. I'm just, we have
Yeah.
never talked about it, so I just wanted to throw that out there. I guess
Right.
see what Director Zucchero thought on that.
I don't think we've ever done it. I think we've just put a stay with it.
Yeah, I don't know. We probably want to look into that
Okay.
a little bit deeper.
But I think I guess one question too is how long does it usually take to complete, like to schedule an HSA and have it completed and all that? Like, what's the timeline on that? You know that?
I think that could vary, I think, just based on contractor availability. And I don't know that the work itself, takes
Right. This is more the scheduling.
a significant amount of time. I would imagine the whole thing could reasonably be accomplished within 30 days, but I don't want to, I haven't gone over all of the specific scope with the
Right.
applicant. So, and I know some of the work they might have already, kind of had the evaluation through their structural engineer. They might be able to kind of plug some of that in. So I would hesitate to be really precise on that, but I would think, 30 days would
Right.
probably be reasonable, unless, Marty, if you want to say that's no way you could get it done in 30 days, which I don't think you'll say, but.
I think 30 days is pretty aggressive, but it would take about 30 days, 30, 45 days.
To be able to do the HSA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I guess I'll just throw out there, it's also the having a person just come and look through and start it, right? If it takes them an extra couple weeks to write it up, like, the city still gets the information, but the house is already in the process of being demoed. You know what I mean? Like they go and they look at it and they take the pictures but they have to put it to the side for 2 weeks because they don't have time, and then they write it up later. Doesn't prevent them from them moving forward with the demolition. Like once you have it documented, then
Right.
whenever you can get to writing it up, write it up. But that kind of thing. So, and I feel like we've had a couple HSAs get turned around fairly quickly. Like they do it, and then within even like a month or 2 months, we're seeing that the commission is seeing it again.
Yeah,
So
it kind of depends on the season for each
right.
season. So Andrea, are you saying that it would take, because you're saying if they did it and then we're like writing it up, potentially the house would already be demoed. Are you saying like we should factor in
Right.
time for the thinking process? Is that kind of what you're saying? Or
Yeah, and maybe I'm jumping the gun. I mean, I'm feeling like, Linda, Chairman Haley, what you were saying at the beginning was, kind of like, this probably is, it feels to me like this HSA is a more fact-finding mission for our records than it is thinking about what they could do with the property. Because it does sound a little insurmountable. It's one of those, I mean, we hate to lose a house, but if there's drainage issues, that just never were addressed, that happens. People can't always keep up with stuff. The property line thing's goofy on this one too. Like the combination of those two things kind of makes this one, not a great option. And I feel like they've done their due diligence as they've explained. I feel like everybody's done their due diligence about really digging in and seeing what they could do. And I don't know, it just feels like we need to try to get the information and let them move on. That's my sense.
and I guess the thought, I think there could potentially, like, there could be a new dugout moved basement with the house moved on top. It could be very expensive. And I don't know if, like, is this the house that we want? Because it would be extraordinary circumstances. I'm pretty sure if they were to have to redig the basement and move it, just based on the past year of all extraordinary circumstance properties, I'm pretty sure that would probably fall into that category. And so I guess my question too is, like, if we were to find like, oh, if they were to do this, they could actually, save the house. Is this the house we would want to put that money into as a city? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about that either, which is stupid because I'm the one that asked the question if they actually had numbers from anybody about how much this project was going to cost. Because rebuilding the whole thing, that can't be cheap either. And at least the owners would have, they would have potential access to some funding from the city.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I was thinking too. Like, what's the cost difference between demo and rebuilding? Because you're going to have a new basement for a new home. Like, they're going to have to do that.
Right.
But if it's if they do it for this home as a historic structure, and that would be significantly more than what we would be able to give them in grant money.
Right.
But we don't know because we don't have an HSA. So
yeah,
it's hard to know for sure.
It sounds like there's some consensus on doing the HSA. Marty agreed that they could do that and then move ahead. Is it a matter of just how we word the resolution to do that?
Well, I think the holdup for me is the stay. So trying to figure out, are we truly just saying we just want the HSA and do whatever you want? Or are we saying like, we don't know actually, maybe it's not as bad, or maybe there's something that we haven't discovered. And do we want some extra time for discovery and discussion for the homeowner? I think
Right.
that's kind of where I am. It's just figuring out what our end goal is as a commission. Do we want
Right.
want time to think about it? Because like Andrea said, if they do it and then write it up, the house could be demoed as soon as the HSA people leave the structure. Like they could demo it the next day without actually reviewing it or anything. So yeah, so I think that's my question, is what's our end goal in doing the HSA?
Right.
Chair Haley, can I just add something too about the timing of everything? So I would say I think it's an admirable concept to try to tie the HSA to kind of the release of the demolition, but I would just want to say that there's no guarantee, right? Like you don't have a written like agreement with the property owner that they will do this. So I think unless you want us to kind of work on a new way of structuring these where we have some written agreement or something, I think it could be really awkward to try to do something on the fly here to suggest that somebody's going to commit to doing a study and you're going to release the demolition, based on, and I'm sure they're very, there's no reason to think they wouldn't do it, but we can't guarantee they're going to do it, right?
No,
So if you kind of make that type of deal, I just want you to understand that there is no actual, I think it would be really hard to enforce the obligation, I guess is what I'm saying from the city staff standpoint.
Mhm.
Right.
So I think you may want to really look at, what are the criteria, what are you trying to achieve with the historic structure assessment? I think Chair Haley, you were really getting to the core of that is, there, like maybe we can document important historical aspects or features of the property, but that's usually pretty limited with an assessment. It's really about what would it cost to stabilize and maybe preserve and restore the historic elements of the structure. You're usually not finding, and every now and again you find some really interesting artifact that's really neat to document, but it's usually more about what restoration work is needed and stabilization for the structure, and is that worth it in this case?
Sure. So I guess
Right.
that brings up the point of, do we even want to do an HSA?
Well, we have the history that's been done by the museum, Bridget, I guess, several versions of that. That may give us the historical information we need, and maybe the HSA doesn't, which always includes that historical information.
Mhm.
If we're not really that interested in the truly structural part, maybe it doesn't tell us much more, the HSA.
Yeah. Because so to go back again and say, is this a property we would want to invest in as far as extraordinary circumstances? Is it a property that we do want to document with HSA, or are we? I don't know.
Right.
Well, maybe what it comes to is just releasing the demolition request.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to just throw one thing in here. I don't know that there's any harm in approving and authorizing the HSA and leaving that at the applicant's discretion if they want to kind of continue to pursue evaluation of the structure. But I think you could still authorize it. Obviously, as you said, there's no obligation, but by release of the permit, they have 6 months to actually complete that demolition. So, again, that's just, kind of where my thoughts are on that. Again, though, if you feel strongly at this point, it's not worth spending, money from the HPF to get any more information, then I think you could decline it based on, you just don't believe that even with that additional information, the property is kind of restorable.
Mhm. So if we grant them probable cause, which would give them access to the HSA, can we do that without putting a stay on it?
Yeah, there's no obligation that you place a stay, even if you have probable cause, because I think the other criteria are around, condition of the property and reasonable cost to restore the property. So you have more than just the probable cause criteria when you consider a demolition.
Okay. So what are thoughts on that? So it'd be giving probable cause determination, approving that, but then not putting a stay on it. And it would just be up to the homeowner if they want to do that or not.
Right.
Are you following everything okay, Chrissy?
I am. Yeah. Thank you.
It's crazy. I'm lost. There's just so many options. Again, I just come back. I feel like they've done their due diligence. They've, they don't have exact numbers, but they've talked to professionals. It's just so, I'd be comfortable doing that
Okay.
and just giving them the option. If they want to pursue it, just to really on compliments of the city of Louisville to figure out what it would really, really cost to do it. And we get the benefit of some data, too, potentially. But if they don't opt to do it, I think that's fine too.
I can say something. I think for me, it comes back to what I think Gary said, which is if we do the HSA, it sounds like we have the history there. I looked at our budget, I saw what our budget is, but you all know more than I do of how fast that goes and where it's best spent. So do we want the structural information from this house? I mean, even if they're willing to do it and we're willing to give them the money, do we want that information or do we feel like we don't need that?
Right.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my question too, was is it sounds horrible, but is it a house even worth putting the HSA, doing the HSA? If we have, if we're staff said, we're not going to get a ton more information from the house. Is it worth it? But I think to some extent for me, it's more of just giving that option, knowing that we gave the homeowner that option, that if they have a change of heart and they're like, we just want to explore it and just see, who knows, at least we provided that avenue. And if they choose not to, that's fine too. But
well, and I guess I'll throw this in here too. It might be nice. It would be nice to have the dollar figures. The January 2021, what does it cost to redo this? Because then, 2 months from now, we have another applicant coming in and they're like, wow, we don't know what to do. We don't know. And we're like, hey, we just did an HSA where another homeowner was in this similar situation and this is, involved raising it or whatever. And then they, we have the information to share with the next homeowner that these are, the costs for them to think about. I don't know if that would ever happen, but So,
Yeah,
but yeah, I like the idea of giving them the option to have it if they want it, and, you know, releasing the stay.
and this is a question for staff, just to, as a refresher, our HSAs, do they actually have projected amounts of how much things would cost, or they just prioritize what needs to be done?
I think typically they can include projected cost of work. I think what we've seen in the past is, you know, those numbers don't always come in super accurate by the time they go out to bid, right? Those costs can go up. Or based on the time they do the HSA from a couple years later when they do the work. So I think I would use it as a really rough ballpark.
Yeah.
And I don't know that our standard requires cost estimates for the
Right.
HSA. So while we get them often, and maybe they're just guesses of the architect, again, there's no requirement that I'm aware of. I could be wrong, and Lisa could correct me, that they include cost estimates.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would feel comfortable just saying that it has probable cause, and if they choose to do the HSA, that'd be great. If not, that's fine too. Without a say, that's, I think, my personal opinion.
I agree with that.
Does anyone have any more discussion about it or questions or?
This is probably written up as 2 resolutions, isn't it? I can't look at the packet as easily when we're discussing or rejecting, but it's probably 1 resolution for the probable cause and a second resolution to release the stay of demolition.
Actually, I don't know that we've included I know we haven't included resolutions, and I don't know that, I did not believe that you typically included resolutions for these 2 types of applications, but yes, I would agree. I mean, I guess you could combine them into a single motion, if you intend to, if you know already you're going to vote the same, but I think it would probably make sense, so you're not predetermining a vote, to make them as 2 separate motions and take 2 votes.
Okay, so the
Probably
first
cleaner.
So the first would just be probable cause. So if someone wants to make a motion for that. And then the second will be that we release the demolition. Is that what the second one would be?
Yeah, yes,
Without
if
stay.
you either release it tonight or release it after a certain number of days.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion for probable cause determination for 832 Parkview Street.
I'll second.
And Keith, I'm so sorry. I just realized I have not pulled you into this conversation at all. I haven't seen your face, and so I totally forgot. Do you have any do you have any comments about this? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thanks for ignoring me there, Linda.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Hey, listen, having gone through this as a homeowner myself, I'm very sympathetic to the homeowners. And I agree with the probable cause, but I also do not want to delay any construction. So I would be agreeable to both of those.
Okay. And so did you second it? Is that what you were doing?
I did, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll continue with our motion, and we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. And so the second motion will just be that we are releasing the demolition.
I would so
Okay.
move.
I'll move to make a motion that we release the demolition Application permit for 832 Park Street tonight with no stay.
I'll second. Parkview.
And we'll do another roll call, please.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, thank you for bearing with us this evening and for just being here. And staff will be in contact as far as how to do the HSA and submit and everything if you do that. So
Right. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank
sure.
you very
Thank you. Have a good night.
I know.
All right, and then our second public hearing.
Yeah, so tonight your second item tonight is just consideration of another probable cause. This one's not tied to a demolition. So let me pull up my screen share here. Oh goodness. Let me get to this right slide. Sorry. Okay, so the second property that's under consideration tonight is 834 Lincoln Avenue. And again, this is for probable cause for landmark designation to allow for funding of an HSA. And the applicants are the homeowners, and they are on the call tonight as well. The property is located kind of middle of Old Town on Lincoln Avenue, on the east side of Lincoln Avenue. It's immediately adjacent to 816 Lincoln, which has been for you a couple times over the past year. It's also directly behind Memory Square Pool and Center for the Arts. So these are some current photos of the property. As you can see, it's a single-story home. It's retained from the street-facing facade. It's retained its original form, while really the only portion, at least visually, that looks visible from the street are the brick window-sills and then the steel support columns on the front porch. It would appear everything else has been either reclad or kind of got something over it. So we'll talk a little bit more about the property, but again, the landmark criteria are what apply here when we talk about probable cause. So first of all, that the landmarks must be at least 50 years old. This one was a little unique. I had not run into a property in Louisville that has kind of this same backstory, and I'm really curious to hear what the Preservation Commission has to say about this. But the property was placed in this location, we believe, in 1961. However, it was probably built in the 1950s, we believe, in Denver. The records show that it came from near First and Steel Street, which Bridget Bacon, the museum coordinator, kind of pieced together that would have been around the same time as Cherry Creek Shopping Center was developed. So it's believed that this house was moved from Denver to this site in order to accommodate the Cherry Creek Shopping Center, which is certainly unique. She also had an interview with the family, Marianne, who's actually was the homeowner at the time, and there's a kind of her recollection of the home getting moved from Denver and placed on the site. So certainly an interesting history here. The original structure is block, and so you can see now it's clad in steel siding. You can kind of see the delineation lines, but it's a cinder block home. And again, you can see the brick window sills here that are still visible today, and the support columns here. Again, from architectural significance, the structure is a mid-20th century residential structure that's block. The street-facing facade retains its original form. There have been numerous additions off the back and certainly changes with a detached garage and what have you. The exterior is now clad with steel siding, and other exterior elements have been replaced over time. But we do find that there is probable cause that it will meet the criteria for architectural significance. And then for social significance, the structure at 834 Lincoln has been owned by two families since being placed here on the property. Primary family was the Pollock family, Howard and Marianne Pollock. Marianne Pollock served on Planning Commission for a time, and Howard Pollock was our fire chief here in Louisville. for a couple of years as well. And they left property in 2019, and it's now occupied by the applicants, Tammy Frederickson and Noah Kaufman. So as far as physical integrity, the house adds character and value to Old Town Louisville. The Pleasant Hill addition was platted in 1907, and there were previous structures on the site. Those, we don't believe any portion of those remain. And again, it was moved here in 1961 and retains its original form from the street. So with that, we recommend that you find that there is probable cause for landmarking and make the property eligible for an HSA for continued evaluation. I'm happy to take any questions you have.
All right, thank you. Do you have any questions for staff?
I have an odd one. How in the world would you move a concrete block house from Cherry Creek to Louisville?
You know, I would assume it's pretty similar to how they moved, how they moved structure today. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity when they moved 1201 Lincoln down to 633 Lafarge. I don't know exactly. I'm just speculating. Probably same thing, right? Just really good supports under the structure, and they loaded it up on a truck with some sort of wagon and moved really slowly.
Yes. It was
Yeah,
a dirt
sometimes
bike in those
cinder
days.
blocks just don't
I
seem
had
as
the same thought though. It's lucky. To my mind, it would have just crumbled, but that's, clearly it's pretty solid.
when her in the interview, it sounded like that's kind of what she was expecting too. It was like our cinder block house is gonna crumble.
It is fall along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really unique house. So fun. Yeah, any other questions for staff? I don't know that we have any other cinder block homes.
Not aware of any other. I think that there was the one that was a cement block, or at least maybe a portion of it was on the porch. I don't know if that home is still standing, but you're right. I think this is the only one I'm aware of with this construction site.
Yeah. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they're gonna take it back to cinder block or.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I keep asking that. All right. And so you said the applicant is here this evening.
Yeah, correct. The homeowners are on the call. So I don't know if they have video or if they're just on via phone, but if they want to introduce themselves and then
Okay.
ask kind of what they, are hoping to learn.
Sure.
Yeah, hi. This is Noah Kaufman.
And I'm Tammy.
And if you'll just state your address for us also, just for the record.
Sure, we're at 834 Lincoln Avenue.
All right.
Yeah, so we are, as you said, we're relatively new owners of this house, but we actually moved to Louisville in 2013. We were living in the North End development. Yeah, we know it's cinder block. It seems to have survived the trip okay. But yeah, we're not really sure what our larger plan is. We certainly have no plan to demo the home. That's not even on the radar. We just want to see what our options are with this first sort of step.
Sure. That's a great place to start. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the homeowner? All right. And any comments from the public? I don't see anybody. So we'll bring it back for discussion. So this is similar to our last one as far as just finding probable cause is it's not binding. So it's just saying that this home would meet our qualifications as far as being eligible for landmarking, and they would be approved to have the HSA up to $4,000. And then once they get that, then they can decide if they want to pursue landmarking or if they don't. So that's kind of what we're here tonight for. It's just more of exploration or giving them the chance for exploration. So, so any thoughts or?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm all for it, but I do. So I'm all for it. I think it meets the criteria on a number of levels, but I'm wondering about when you get to the landmarking step. I know it always comes up in the report about whether the house was moved there or not. And was always like we saw one a few months ago, and yeah, they'd moved it like a foot back or something like that, but like literally take one and move it. And I guess I'm wondering how that like affects landmarking,
Right. So
just
on
from
na-
a
on a
whole
national
perspective on the national level.
on a
Exactly.
national level, it's not good, but for Louisville, it's very common, and we have landmarked homes that have been moved, don't we, staff? I know, like the mining cabins
Yeah.
are an example.
Yeah.
As well as, yeah, I mean, 1201 Lincoln, I think, is the most recent example too, right? You all approved it to
Right.
be landmarked and then it
Right.
moved.
Yeah.
At least those two, and I'm sure that, there could be
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Right. There's been quite a few of our properties that were moved from within Louisville.
Right.
Even without. So it doesn't affect eligibility or
Okay.
at all. I think anywhere else it would, but it's part of our history, and so that's something that we've
Right.
We've
Well,
had some that have moved from Marshall and from Lafayette as well, I think.
Yeah.
right. I think even outside of Louisville. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the fact that we actually have the history, like
Mhm.
instead of just like, well, this house is here and we don't know why and we don't know where it came from, but that we've been kind of able to deduce that came from Cherry Creek when there's
Mhm.
development going on down there, or whatever, and we have actual oral history to support the recollections of that. That's just so cool. Like,
Right. Well,
I
and
think it's awesome.
if we didn't have the Louisville history of moving, we probably would not have moved and landmarked 1201 Lincoln.
The ones we do, yeah, right,
Mhm.
exactly, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm fine proceeding with the probable cause.
Right. And one interesting thing too about this is that it is a younger house that was moved into this area. So that's it's kind of an anomaly in that little
Mhm.
but yeah. Any other, so it's 50 years or older, being moved, and when it was built, it's retained its architectural integrity, and then also has great social history as far as the moving houses and the families. They were there, the Pollock and the other family, like a lot of longevity. So, yeah, some good social history.
I think it meets all of our criteria as staff wrote it up.
Okay. Keith?
No, I think it's a great one. I agree with it.
All right. Are you ready to make a motion on this one?
Let's do it.
I'll jump in. I'll make a motion. It's going to do this right.
Yeah.
To-
That's way more intimidating than my job. How do you make motions?
I'll make a motion to move forward with the HSA for 834 Lincoln Avenue.
A
Awesome.
second.
I think we'll actually say we're approving determination for probable cause. Is that what the language is?
Okay.
I think that's actually the language we need, is probable cause, because the HSA comes with that.
Okay, so approving determination for probable cause for
Perfect.
834 Lincoln Avenue.
Awesome. Good job.
I'll second.
All right, we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. And so to the Kaufmans, thank you for bringing this to us. This is a really exciting project, and I think it'll be really interesting to see the HSA as far as what you find, and staff can also just go through our program as far as what to expect and how to proceed. But one of the things too, I know we joked about the cinder blocks, but just understanding that you get to kind of pick your period of significance as far as what you want to bring back or keep or whatever. And so that's a whole process. And landmarking doesn't mean that you can't ever change anything with the house. So I think that's always an important thing to kind of go forward with, just knowing that there's a lot of options and creativity. So it'll be really exciting to see what happens.
That's great. Thanks. Thanks so much.
Yep. Have a good night. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Such a great location too, with the backing up to the pool. All right, so our next item is items from staff.
Sure. So in your packet, you have the 2021 posting locations, the open government pamphlet, and then the 2021 meeting dates. We'll have you make a motion on the posting locations in a minute, but I'll cover the others. The open government pamphlet is just for your review, just as a refresher on kind of the citywide policies regarding meeting or public meetings. And then the 2021 meeting dates, that's just kind of a heads up for everyone. And just one note is that the February meeting is proposed to be 1 week delayed due to the President's Day holiday. So similar to tonight, where we're 1 week past our normal meeting, we're going to be doing the same in February. And then if one of you, the posting locations are the same as last year. They're the same for all city boards and commissions, but if one of you would make a motion to approve those locations for your commission, and then we'll do a roll call on that.
They wouldn't be different than the other city locations, would they?
Nope, they're the same.
It's just
Why
acknowledging.
why would we need to approve it then? These are the city locations that are in the pamphlet, right?
They are. We just ask that you approve them as an acknowledgement that you kind of concur to the process. You're right. It's probably not a discretionary approval. If you disagree, we'd have to come back and do the whole thing.
Do probable cause requests get posted?
Probable causes are not public hearings, so those do not get posted.
I see. Okay. I would move to approve those locations.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. As far as other staff updates go, I didn't have time to prepare your typical kind of demolition update as far as kind of all the activity that occurred late December and early January. So we'll bring that to you hopefully in our February packet. I don't know that there was actually much to include on there. And then we are anticipating our new preservation planner starting next Tuesday, so a week from tomorrow. So you will assume you'll see her at the next meeting in some capacity, and then be hearing from her over time.
Awesome.
Her name is Kim Bauer.
Cool.
Will she be working full-time as in doing preservation or half-time?
So it's a part-time position. She'll be solely focused on preservation. Unless, at some point, if the funding kind of comes back citywide, we may consider doing otherwise, but for now she'll be part-time.
So is it half-time or as needed?
I'll let
So
Director Shapiro
Yeah, so
weigh
it's
in.
29 hours a week. And then, so when we had the position last year, it was a full-time position, but it wasn't full-time historic preservation. It was split 50-50 between historic preservation and general planning. So it's been cut to 29 hours a week, and we anticipate that'll be fully dedicated to historic preservation, especially if we've had the workload that we've had the last year and a half
we've got 29 hours at least of work a week for that position.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Great.
That's good news. Yeah.
Yeah, it means it's working. Yay.
Mhm.
No further updates unless, Rob, unless you have anything else I forgot.
I don't, thank you.
And I was just going to mention the Saving Places conference, just make sure Rob sent that email out. So if you're interested in doing that remotely this year, it's really beneficial and easy because we do it remotely.
Mhm.
Also, are we will we have our meeting with the city attorney like we usually do?
Yes, that is,
Awesome.
I don't know the exact date, but I do know that the city clerk did confirm you are on the schedule for 2021, but I don't know the exact date.
Okay. Awesome. All right. And then any updates from the commission members?
I have some questions. Maybe they're updates. When the minutes originally came out or the notes came the other day, they didn't include the new items, and the pointer to the full packet wasn't right, and Lisa got those corrected. But I wondered how does the city clerk get involved in that? You said the city clerk would correct that?
Yeah, so the city, planning staff prepares all the information, but we don't post it on the website. So that's just the office that
I see.
actually posts it through our system and make sure everything's linked okay.
So they do the web update sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then related to that, when we have a list of items, I guess, and I don't know if they're the staff items or they're our items, but they kind of should be one and the same. So I'd like to propose a couple of changes. We've had a lot of items that we've discussed in the past year and the year before that get talked about and then they sort of disappear.
I agree.
And we need to know, I know that with the staffing you've had and the much bigger issues with the city and a pandemic and all, our issues aren't the most important thing around, but I think we shouldn't be losing these items. We talked about discussing the resolution 31 that came up last month. It talked about some new spending limits or funding limits. We've talked about conservation easements in general and how to get that together. Because I don't think that what we did last month was really would pass muster. It didn't match the state regulations, which I discussed with Lisa and Rob. We need to talk about the outreach project that we proposed that, we don't see anymore. It'd be good to see the status of properties that are being proposed for landmarks. So I wondered if it might be possible for us to maintain a list of the what really are open items, because the ones that were on our agenda tonight were really just future meetings, and that was about it. So have a real list, and that doesn't mean that everything gets worked on at the same time, but have some idea if something is backburnered, it is not going to get any attention, but not to keep losing these things. To have a list. And the second would be that we're having difficulty talking to each other because we get together one Monday evening a month, and we can't send emails without running into problems with the sunshine laws. One thing that the city council has done is to create a public folder for emails for themselves, actually multiple public folders, so that if they choose to send emails, they can be made public, and then we don't really have a problem with the sunshine law. So I'd make a second proposal that we create a folder like that. Might be a good timing to do it since we're getting a new support person, liaison. Anyway,
So if I could just take a minute, I really like your idea of adding, so I'm kind of thinking of these as work plan items. So you don't have a formal work plan, but maybe we add an agenda item that's just updates on projects and work plan items, or just maybe just projects, something like that. So we'd add something and then we'd do an update each meeting so that we could track progress on all of those. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And maybe it comes, right after items from staff or part of items from staff, and then we can give updates on all of those items. So if the commission is okay with that, if there's no objections, we'll go ahead and institute that next month. And then on the issue of the files, so when somebody emails the city council, it goes into a public file, and it's part of our own kind of higher standard as far as sunshine laws, but the city council is not able to email each other or respond to emails. That is, you're still not allowed to do that. So I think there's a little bit of a distinction in getting, but I think that you have a desire to talk about issues in more depth, more than just the more than just the property specific cases that come before you every month. So I think what we need to do is get those on an agenda so that you can spend time discussing them. So that is open to the public. But there is a distinction on those files that I think you're referring to. Both the Planning Commission and City Council have those, I think, by city charter.
there is a provision for planning meetings, I think, in the notification that the city attorney just sent us in that booklet. So maybe if time permitting, maybe we could have such a planning meeting. But yeah, if we did have an ability to have some mechanism, and maybe we could have a public folder where we discuss things like that, because nothing we're doing is anything we really want to hide from the public. We could talk about all these issues in front of anyone.
Well, I think what Rob was saying is that the folder is if someone emails the planning commission or city council, it's from outside, it goes into the folder, but there's no internal discussion. Does that make sense?
But that isn't saying we couldn't.
I think Rob is saying we couldn't. Is that correct, Rob? We can't have internal discussion within the folder.
Well, if it's public, could we?
Unfortunately, no. Like all discussion items need to be on an agenda, and then you would discuss the substance at a public meeting. You can have planning meetings, but then the purpose of the planning meeting is to talk about topics for future discussion, but any substantive discussion of a particular topic would have to be on an agenda before you discussed it. So the just publishing your emails don't meet the standard of providing that public notice to be part of the discussion.
Well,
and certainly when we do our city attorney training, she can explain it in more detail and explain some of the maybe the legal backing behind it.
Maybe just maintaining that work item list and arranging to speak about those things will get the job done. But there's just I feel like that we're really not meeting our obligation to the city for having created the commission right now, or the preservation plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in with Gary, like I have on my list something Gary didn't mention, yeah, we need to talk about, are we going to require contractors for HSAs? We talked about that a little bit. There's been just a lot of little things that we've wanted to discuss, and they kind of pop up on any given night because we end up with some new situation that we haven't encountered. and we don't have time to fully flush it out. So I don't know if that involves, so like for the school that I work for, they have two different kinds of meetings. Like they have separate types of meetings. So, right. So I'm picturing like, well, can we still have our meeting once a month where we discuss the things that we currently do, you know, our probable cause and public hearings, blah, 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 blah. But we have another meeting, I don't know, every other month or every quarter or whatever, that's open to the public, but it is not going over any of the stuff we usually do, but all this other stuff that just keeps kind of
Accumulating.
falling off, and
Mhm.
just never, I mean, it's kind of can be, the meetings can be overwhelming and a lot to think of, and then we can't, you know. So yeah, I'm kind of with Gary on that. And then I will say too, since I think we are on updates from commission members, like, yeah, I won't have time to get back to our whole, I was in the process last summer after the spreadsheet, I was trying to build a virtual presentation, just kind of the framework for it. But summer got away with me, and with this year at school, I just don't have any extra time. I do intend to get back to that next summer. So I will throw that out there. But yeah, I feel like it's good and bad, right? The program's so successful now that we don't have time to do the other stuff, right? We just don't have time. So
Well, if we don't have time to get these other items on regular agendas, I mean, it's up to you. You're all volunteers. So if you ever want to have an overflow meeting to get to any of these items, you know, we certainly can. You know, typically staff tries to provide discussion and background on these items. Certainly we haven't been able to keep up this last year with Felicity coming and going twice, and all, you know the whole story.
right.
But and then you know, just hours being cut and so forth. But in any case, you know, we certainly could do overflow meetings if you find that we're not getting to the items. You know, whether staff can provide substantive information on some items, you know, we would certainly do our best on those overflows. Hopefully things pick up once Kim starts next week and she gets trained. You know, I would tell you that when you bring on, so you'll learn about Kim's background, but she does have, you know, quite a bit of experience in city planning and historic preservation planning. So we do think she's going to be able to hit the ground running, but there'll be some training,
Sure.
get her up to speed. So, you know, hopefully in a month or two, we'll really have a staff member that can really take some of these concepts under their wing and really give you some substantive information. And she can coordinate with you. And keep in mind too that, you know, you can meet in twos, you know, you can do subcommittees and work on things in pairs of two and not violate our sunshine laws. It's when you communicate beyond that. So you can prep for an item, you can meet with staff, either individually or in pairs, and kind of work on these items. So I think this is a great discussion, especially coming in with a new staff member. And then we're very happy to try to, you know, do what we can to switch, you know, have extra meetings or switch around the agenda to help with that discussion.
I want to make clear in bringing that up too. I'm not denigrating you or Lisa, because we really appreciate all you do to make this work. It's just that it's the situation that's happened, and I think we can do better.
Thanks for stating that. I appreciate that. We really and I think as Lisa and I have filled in on and off over the last year, you know, I want to thank Lisa. She's done a ton of extra work, especially just to keep just to keep the agendas and the projects going and meeting with residents. She's done just the lion's share of all of that. So I want to really thank Lisa too, for keeping things moving. Really appreciate her work on that.
And yeah, No offense, Gary, none taken on that at all. And it's always a joy when I can pop into your world and see what y'all are up to. And I'll quietly disappear and you probably won't see me again for a while, but I always love my time getting to work with you guys. So it's always a highlight for me.
If I'm not mistaken, when you called in and were visible, you were in your office because there were city maps on your wall.
Mhm.
Yeah, my home internet was being weird tonight, so it was
Oh.
I was more confident if I came into the office tonight.
Well, so maybe I could suggest that I believe in February, we usually feels like we kind of revisit committees and who wants to be on what committee and that kind of thing. So that might be an interesting committee this year, is to kind of do a work plan committee and go back through our minutes and kind of tease out these little snippets,
Mhm.
like, again, like having a contractor on an HSA and the conservation easement thing, you know, just kind of go through and glean out the things, and then, you know, we can kind of prioritize those and then figure out, yeah, do we need to have like an extra meeting or whatever to hash, you know,
Mhm.
some of it out, because we are so busy in our regular scheduled meetings.
Yeah,
So
I
that,
think February will be tight, just already knowing we've got a good chance of an application as well as 2 HSA requests that are probably coming in for February. So just being realistic, I think about the February agenda as well as kind of Kim getting onboarded. I don't want to speak for Rob, but I'm thinking March might be just a little more
yeah.
feasible to make sure we spend some time, additional time. Or we
So,
can email you and-
Andrea, are you just saying you want to have the agenda item just to talk about committees, right? Like what-
Right. And a suggestion for a committee that we've never had
Mm.
is a work a work you know, a work item planning committee, you know, just to go and pull a list of all the stuff that we've talked about that we've never
Hmm.
talked about, you know what I mean? That's a committee, actually, a committee to plan committee work. No, I don't, I mean, I'm kidding, but not really, right? Because there are just these little things that we've talked about, and you'd have to cull through the minutes again to kind of be like, oh yeah, we had talked about doing blah 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 blah, but you know, like Gary said, we kind of lost track of it, you know, because a lot of them are just one-off things, and we get these ideas, and then the next meeting comes and now we have a new one-off thing that we're thinking about, you know. So
Some of it might even be going through agendas too, because like
exactly,
the agenda, so it's not even reading through all the minutes
yeah,
necessarily, but just even
yeah,
usually at the meeting we kind of say we need to talk about that. So
yeah, exactly. Like I have my list right here. That's next meeting, like, right?
yep,
So
yeah,
anyway, so yeah.
Second
But
meeting
but
helps.
Lisa, you're totally right. Like I don't even think last year, uh I don't even think we got the Hannah and Chair Haley. I don't think we voted on that till like May. I mean, it was
right,
crazy. Last year was crazy. We didn't
yeah,
even get to that until it was so
Mhm.
late. It was like, oh, it was insane. So
right, yeah, because we 'cause we did our elections in March or February, because it was right before, was it after?
oh, I feel like it was later than that. I feel like it was April.
But we lost Felicity the first time in March. It was right as COVID.
Yeah, then you didn't meet, I think, until maybe
Yeah,
It was,
June.
that week. So
yeah, it was crazy.
yeah, so
Can I ask a question real quick? You had mentioned having contractors as part of HSAs. Can you explain that a little bit more, what you meant by that?
Oh, I think we just, I think it came up maybe
it-
last time that, you know, we do sometimes get these numbers back from HSAs, but like they're not always realistic. So we were thinking about, yeah, what if the HSA also did require someone who actually was kind of current and up to date with pricing to help
Right, yeah.
support that, because, you know, we
So,
get these
yeah.
numbers and
So again, I think maybe we want to talk about what's included in an HSA more broadly. I think, because I think that, you know, architects, so oftentimes architects are leading these, or engineers. And
Right.
while they aren't contractors, they usually have a pretty good idea of costing. And I think what you would have to do is, you know, it's a lot of work, I guess, for a contractor to do when he's not actually bidding on a job, I guess is what I'm
yeah,
saying.
fair enough.
So
It also
I think we need to
increases
be
the
realistic too with, I mean, unless you want to pay the contractor to do some bid, you know, as a
Right.
consultant,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how valuable do we think that is to get pricing? Again, I think another thing to keep in mind is we get these HSAs, and oftentimes people don't come in and landmark for a year or 2 or 3 or even more, and those
Right.
prices can be really stale. I think what we're really trying to achieve is what do you need to do to the home to restore it to a period of significance, and what barriers are there to, you know, get code compliant systems and structural stability? And you know, that's been our focus. And I feel like, you know, if we're going to worry about pricing, I'd really worry about pricing at the grant level. Like we get these grant numbers from architects, and they are almost never, if ever, bid by actual contractors. And then you know, those prices are set, and you're going to probably get some artificial inflation, right? Because everybody's going to use all the money that's provided, right? And so that's where we were thinking, if you're doing, like, if you remember when we were kind of, and it was kind of a last minute shotgun approach at the last meeting, but we did say, hey, people have talked about this, especially with extraordinary circumstances. We tried to throw something in that resolution that said, hey, if you're going to do extraordinary circumstances, the city should be able to ask for, you know, a couple of competitive bids to make sure that we're funding in an appropriate manner. So I would maybe suggest that we focus on the grant level, changing our standard. And then there's the question of on our standard grant, because it's a burden and it's a barrier every time you add something like this. So do we worry about it at your standard grant, or do we only worry about it at an extraordinary circumstances level? So I think as we're looking at maybe some tweaks to our funding resolution, again, and we just updated that a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, because I think it was before Gary and Andrea were on the commission. So we had some discussions about some of these things and did change some language around it. But you know, now that we've lived with it for 3 years, it's probably a good time to review some of the language.
And I thought the HSA, we were talking about requiring a structural engineer. Wasn't that what we were?
Oh, maybe
Yeah.
I think it was
So
the structural.
That too.
We already have that.
So we increased the available funding with the idea that it would allow for structural engineering. Like before, it was so low that you were just never going to get real. It was very unlikely unless they paid extra.
But I think we allowed it, but I don't think we required it.
No, we don't require it. So that's why I think what we should do is we should look at our standards, you know, top to bottom of what we have. Like, and that's something we probably haven't reviewed for. We've never reviewed it in the last 5 years, and it's probably been longer since we reviewed what's our list of required elements within the HSA. So I think that's a really good thing to review.
Yeah.
It was discussed as being on one of our work items, and it's another one that hasn't panned out.
Right.
Would it be possible to forward what we know of these potential work items to Lisa or Rob or somebody?
In fact, I'm writing a list, and then maybe what we'll do is email you our list that we think is included. And then what you should do is you should reply, but don't reply all. Reply to staff only if you think we're missing anything or that we didn't capture it correctly. So just reply to staff. And then at our February meeting, we'll have a list, and then you can have a public discussion about the list as well. So that's your opportunity to discuss it with each other. And then hopefully go from there and try to focus in on these items.
Okay.
Yeah, so we want to talk about, I know we want to talk about public outreach. And I know so on the public outreach side, we have the comic book is the one new idea. I'm not comic book, coloring book. And then and then doing a mailing. We haven't done a direct mailing, so those are the two ongoing things. And then we have our standard public outreach. Hopefully we can go back out to farmers markets, hopefully soon, and street fairs and things like that. Maybe if we're lucky this coming summer, who knows, right? But so we need to talk about conservation easements. We need to talk about grants and getting bids. We need to talk about HSA standards. Is there anything else you want me to add to the list now? And then again, we'll have time to think about it and you can email in the meantime. Did I miss anything?
Was there anything else in that resolution 31 that you had at the last meting? Maybe that's
Well,
the same as looking at the grants.
We had discussed increasing the residential grant amounts for the standard grant. Is that something you might want to look at more and get some more data on? Okay.
Spending limits, yeah.
I think that maybe we should have a discussion ourselves about what we really mean by extraordinary circumstances, since that seems to be the toughest item we always run up against.
Yeah, and just as a little background, I remember we had, when we rewrote the resolution a few years ago, it used to just say extraordinary circumstances, and it had absolutely no other language other than that. And that was really difficult. So 3 years ago, we kind of went back and forth about specificity, and we put the language that we have in there now with the idea that if you get too specific, anyways, there's definitely a balance. And if the commission as a whole wants to revisit that, I'm going to add that to the list too. All right, this is great. Okay, anything else?
Something that's not for that list, but I noticed earlier, we talked about having a liaison to the Historic Commission.
We forgot to.
Oh, yeah, we didn't do that one.
But we didn't do that last year, or I don't think we have. Can you tell us what that involves? Should we be doing that?
So the Historic Commission liaison, when I first started, I actually did that, kind of suggested that we do that just as a way to be connected to what was happening with the museum. I thought that was a good connection. And so it's not something we have to do. And I don't think we've had one for the last 2 years, maybe. But so it's just a good, I think anytime we can network with other commissions, it just makes the city boards and commissions stronger, just so we know what each other's doing and having that connection. So is anyone interested in doing that? It's another meeting, it's basically tuning into their meetings, either monthly or every 2 months or something. But it is really interesting because you get to hear all the things that have been submitted to the museum and that kind of thing. So
I would possibly be interested in that.
Rotating business. I think Keith used to be on that commission, right?
Yeah, I did actually. I would be, if nobody else would want to do it and we decided it was a good thing to do, I could do that. Especially since now that it's all virtual usually.
right, it should be all virtual still too. Christy, what were you?
Yeah, probably for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying I'd also be interested if Keith wasn't, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Or even if the two of you just want to alternate too, just so it's not 2 meetings.
Well, that might be an idea too.
Yeah. So
I can alternate too if you two are busy.
So yeah, if you I guess everyone can do it. Do you want to
Do rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
There you go.
but yeah, if Keith and Chrissy, if the two of you want to, we can nominate both of you as just to go back and forth. That way you can decide what months work for each of you.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Sure. Yeah, fine with that.
Do we actually need a formal nomination, Lisa, or is that okay just to, it's not a super formal
I
position.
don't know anything about,
No.
I just know a couple years ago, somebody from the historical commission started showing up at our meetings
Right.
and said they were a liaison. And I mean, I didn't know any, Felicity may have known about it, but I don't know what went into that or how it was organized. We should probably just check with Bridget, and I'm sure it's not a big deal. They'd probably love to have you there and kind of have change. So I think it's just, figuring out the logistics of it. But it would be informal, I think.
Right. I don't think we need to
Yeah.
to vote on it. It's kind of like a,
And just a reminder too, that the one project we really have gotten done this last year is we've worked with Paleo West on, I think it was 100 surveys. And so we've actually received, they did it in 2 phases. It actually started in 19 at the very end of 19 and then through 20. And they did kind of 50 each year. And we're in the middle of reviewing the second batch. And think we'll probably finish that up in the next month or two. So we'll have 100 new property surveys.
Good.
And I think that's supposed to kind of round out or complete surveys for all of Old Town and Downtown. I think per the preservation master plan, I think we will have kind of ticked that box. So we did our historic context, and then we finished these last surveys that were identified. So those are pretty big milestones too, it's not something that you all are working on directly, but it is something that the program's been doing over the last 3 or 4 years, just to really, increase the documentation. And I would say that, I think the historic context reports are really, really valuable, and I'm trying to lean on those more, especially when we're looking at prioritizing landmarks and trying to discuss those more in the staff reports when applicable.
right. And they are really interesting, but also really valuable just to read through for all of us. So any refreshing and first reads are great too. So yeah, thanks, Rob. That's a really good use of our HPF. So the Historical Commission meets on every 3rd Wednesday at 6:30. So you can find that information on the website too, but every 3rd Wednesday at 6:30. So yeah. All right. That was some really good, I think it's always good at the beginning of the year just to kind of recollect. As we said, last year was just kind of very muddled. And so it's good just to kind of regroup and plan, and that even if this is our new norm this year, at least like we know how to do this part. And so everything else we can kind of get more strategic in how we spend the year. So thank you for bringing that up, Gary, and for your feedback to Andrea. So discussion for future meetings is basically what we just talked about. Demolition. Do what?
I think we have an attendee who's got a hand raised. I'm not 100% sure it's on purpose, but I just
Okay.
wanted to note it.
Sure.
Okay, I'll go ahead and allow to talk, and then we'll see.
And you are,
Hi. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Can
you
you?
just say your name and address for us for the record?
Yeah, I'm Leah Engstman. My address is 1510 Madison Court, and I'm your liaison from the Historical Commission.
Oh, great.
That's why I was trying to raise my hand for today.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Thank you for coming. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I listen to every one of your meetings, and I take notes and I report it back to the Historical Commission.
Oh, great.
So if you do have any questions, or if you want, if you ever want to report back and forth, I'm always here.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. That's a big commitment. So we really appreciate it. Yeah, and we might even, if any time there's something that you want to kind of connect us on an issue or anything in the public comments at the beginning of our meeting, would probably be a good time just to check in if you have anything. So,
Okay.
yeah.
We don't have a bunch of stuff to report usually. The one thing I would say is to check out what the Historical Museum is doing online if you haven't lately, because they have been doing a lot of pandemic stuff that's pretty awesome. Putting up like oral histories and just a lot of really neat stuff. And a huge digital picture library and stuff like that. So,
Wow. That's great. Yeah, Bridget does such a good job.
she does. Yeah, and we meet every other month on the third.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, every other month.
Yeah,
Okay,
third Wednesday.
good to know too.
Mhm.
That would basically be 3 meetings for each of you, Keith and Chrissy. So, okay. Yeah, and I'm sure, just remember Leah's name when you're at the meeting, and you can always maybe connect with her if you have.
Like
any-
Keith probably remembers me. We were on it together.
Oh,
Yeah, that's true. It's the odd months, right?
Yes, the odd months.
Yeah, that's how I remember, because I'm kind of an odd fellow.
But we miss having you.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Leah.
Okay, yep. I am here. If you have any questions, just feel free.
Okay, yeah, that's great to know. That's awesome. Thank you. All right. Yeah, so we had some future meeting stuff. I think we already looked at those or talked about future meetings in general. So the demolition language update and HSA requirement, Rob, you might want to add those to our ongoing list. All right, our last item is to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you so much for this evening and have a good rest of your night.
All right, thanks.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Very informative